Hello, my name is Shon Simpkins and I'm a public insurance adjuster. And what I do on a regular basis is I help people with property claims issues with their insurance company. And so I make sure that the insurance company pay people what they're supposed to pay them when they have property damage. I wanted to make a brief video today about the rights of possession of a property or of a property owner. When people buy a house or a person buys a piece of property, they actually have the real estate, which is the land and the development on the land, any developments on the land and structures developments on the land. This is in combination with a bundle of property rights granted to them by their local, state, and federal government. And so together, these bundles of rights plus the real property actually come together to form the actual real estate that a person buys. In the real estate industry in the US, these bundle of rights are actually commonly referred to by the acronym D.U.P.E, which stands for D.U.P.E, or D disposition, U use, P possession, and E exclusion. And what I'm going to talk about a little bit is the definition of these bundle of rights, starting with D for disposition. Disposition grants the property owner the right to dispose of or sell, give away, grant, or any other way that the property owner actually wants to give the property or possession of the property to someone else. And so disposition covers charity, somebody who maybe want to donate the house to charity, or somebody who want to give the house to their children, or whether they want to sell the house on the open market. The next right in the acronym is U, or use. Now, use deals with control of the property. This gives the owner the right to use the property as long as it's within a manner that's consistent with the local laws. In modern times, the use of a property is not necessarily absolute. Because of the increase in population, especially in areas where there are homeowners, a lot of homeowners living together, it's necessary for the public good that there be some control on the use of property, just in the interest of public safety and the keeping of property values. And so there may be a limitation in terms of zoning and certain local city ordinance on a person's ultimate ability to use that property. The next right in the bundle of rights covered by the acronym D.U.P.E that we want to talk about is the right to possession. This gives the property owner the right to possess the property in privacy and exclude other people from possessing that property. This property right is especially important in terms of the owner's ability to control access to the property and the use of the access to that property. So in other words, if an owner has the property and they have possession of the property, they don't necessarily themselves have to be at the property. However, they can allow somebody else that they give access to be at that property. And of course, if they choose to do so, they can exclude anybody else from being in that property, which is exclusion, or the right to quiet enjoyment. This concept kind of covers the idea that a person's home is their castle. This deals with the right of a property owner to once again control entry and possession with the property, and it gives them the right to go after damages for anybody who violates that right. And so in this regard, this can be considered the trespass right. This is the property right that would also exclude law enforcement and other government officials from randomly just coming on to the property and disrespecting the property's owner's rights. Because once you are on the property under this particular right, you are no longer under public property, which is what government enforcers are supposed to patrol. And so this in general excludes that, but there are exceptions, of course, when the law enforcement agencies or government officials have some kind of warrant or some type of official reason for being on that property, then the right of exclusion is kind of overruled by the need for the government to protect the public safety. Also, there's an issue of eminent domain or the right for the government to condemn the property. And in those cases, what happens is that the government is able to use certain government powers to actually override your right to exclude anybody, and in general also in a certain way right to possess the property. But that's the basic definition of all of those rights together: the right to dispose of your property how you feel like, the right to use your property in a manner that's consistent with the law, the right to possess your property and allow somebody to possess your property who you give permission to, and the right to exclude anybody you don't want on the property as long as there's no extenuating circumstances that's coming from government activity. And so these are the bundle of rights that belongs with the actual real property to the property owner that actually owns the property. Now, in cases where you have a civil proceeding, especially a separation or divorce, these property rights may be owned jointly by both a husband and a wife, or two people cohabitating with each other. Generally, on the deed, it'll indicate whether there's more than one property owner on that given piece of real estate. It's important that in these civil proceedings, in the separation or divorce proceedings, that each person be responsible for maintaining their own rights or bundle of rights to those properties. When you, as a co-owner of a property, walk away from your property, you are actually giving up your right to that property, and the other person automatically takes that right to the property. Now, there are situations, and in general, most states have some type of laws where they address, maybe not necessarily, let's say a husband and wife, but they have what is called adverse possession laws. And what this simply means is that when you have a property owner who has a bundle of rights to a given piece of real estate, and they choose to walk away or leave those rights, and they quote unquote abandon the property, what happens is that another person who, for instance, may come in, take over the taxes, pay insurance on the property, and upkeep the property, well, that person now have adversely possessed that property. And there's actually laws in most states that will actually recognize the adverse possessor over the rights of the person who may have actually purchased or acquired the property in another way. And so they do recognize people who adversely take over a property. Usually there's a statute of limitations on it, and it's a civil matter, so it is on the owner of the property to actually go in and assert their rights to the property. Now, adverse possession is usually occurs between strangers, but in the case where you have a couple who are together on the property, it's important that one person doesn't simply walk away from their rights, because that, although it may not actually be called adverse possession, it is a form of adverse possession because you're actually giving up your rights. And so you don't want to do that. So if you're in a situation where you're going through a divorce or you're going through a very serious separation, and there's going to be issues, of course, many people, like for instance, when you get a husband and wife, sometimes the husband doesn't want to cause trouble. Maybe they're really having problems getting along together, and they have to, maybe one have to be separated from the house just for them to keep the peace. It's important, however, for each person who is actually an owner of that house to maintain their rights in that house, even if later on you're going to separate it. Because if you walk away from your rights to that house, then it becomes harder and harder to make a legal claim to the house, any benefit from proceeds of sales, or any rights that you might have as you're going through the process of separating. Of course, separation and divorce are serious things that comes with a lot of emotional trauma, and it could come with a lot of financial trauma also. And so you and your spouse want to get through these situations as well as possible. The key thing here is to maintain the bundle of rights to your house. Do not give up your rights to your property, and try to come to a peaceful resolution with your partner if you have to go through some type of separation or divorce. Well, I hope this was helpful If you have any comments or you have any ideas that or thoughts that you want to put in the comment section about what we talked about the bundle of rights and divorce that you think might help somebody else, please feel free to put it in the comment section. But most importantly, please subscribe below. Please hit that subscribe button below and take a look at some of the other videos I have on useful topics. I love talking to people about home property issues, home insurance issues, real estate issues, and you can ask me and put your comments in those videos too. But please click on that subscribe button, and I look forward to talking with you next time. Dr. Whitehead, by the way.
Oh, let me get something. I don't know. That was the old TV.
And actually, I set it up pretty quick.